Hello, my dear Horror Area 51 family. I hope all of you are definitely enjoying our scary story. I just have one request from you, that if you are watching this video and haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please quickly press the subscribe button. It motivates us to bring more such content for you. So, let's embark on this journey of a terrifying story. My name is Claire, and for a long time I thought horror stories were just for books and movies. But what happened to me in a small American town, what I lived through, was real. Too real. It was not about ghosts or demons or vampires. It was something more terrifying. The patience of a man who watched me, followed me, and decided my life was his to invade. This is my story. Willow Creek, Montana was supposed to be a place of peace. When I packed up my things and left Chicago, I wanted quiet streets, rising mountains, and a slower rhythm of life. My new teaching job at Willow Creek Middle School seemed the perfect chance. My cabin wasn't far from town, tucked along the river where the willows leaned over like old men whispering secrets. The first nights there, the silence was both soothing and frightening. No car horns, no shouting, just crickets, the soft flow of the water, and wind pressing against the wooden walls. But silence gives space for other things to grow. I noticed him the first week, an old blue Ford truck always parked 2 streets down from the school entrance. At first, I thought nothing of it. Small towns were full of old vehicles that barely ran. But as days blurred together, I realized the truck was there every afternoon, engine off, headlights dark, a shadow sitting in the driver's seat. The outline of the man never moved much, though I could feel his head following me whenever I walked toward my car. The other teachers laughed when I mentioned it. "Town's full of hunters," said Ron, the gym coach. "Probably just napping before heading out into the woods." I wanted to believe that, but the weight of those unseen eyes sank into me, threading fear into every step I took. By October, the packages started arriving at my cabin. No return address, no name, just small items dropped on my porch late at night. A book of poetry I didn't own, a single wilted rose, a photograph of me locking my door. The picture snapped something inside me. Someone had been close enough, bold enough to come right to my house, my safe place. I reported it to Sheriff Miller, who scratched his head with pity. "He probably just kids messing around. Halloween coming up and all. Don't worry too much." But kids didn't have that blue Ford. The sheriff didn't live in my skin, didn't feel that stomach-twisting dread when I realized someone had been standing just feet behind me while I fumbled with my keys in the dark. The phone call started in November, always after midnight. At first, silence was on the other end, just breathing. Then came the whispers. "I like the way you run." Sometimes laughter, sometimes singing, barely above a hum. Sometimes my name stretched out until it sounded inhuman. I changed my number twice, but the calls never stopped. I began to wonder if he was closer to me than I thought. Someone in the phone company, someone in town, someone blending among the friendly faces I saw every day. That was the worst part, not knowing who, not knowing when. One December night, a snowstorm rolled over Willow Creek, thick and heavy, blinding the roads. Power flickered out, leaving me in the candlelit dark. And that's when I heard it. Footsteps crunching in the fresh snow outside my porch. No car, no voices, just the slow, deliberate sound of boots. I dialed the sheriff in the dark, heart pounding so loud I thought whoever was outside might hear. By the time Miller and his deputy arrived, the footsteps were half buried in the storm, leading to the back of my house and circling it. They didn't find the man, but I knew he had been there, watching, testing how close he could get. Months went by. I stopped sleeping properly. Every time the floor creaked, every time wind knocked against the shutters, I jolted awake with my chest frozen. One spring night, I woke without knowing why. Something tugged me out of sleep, some primal warning. My eyes went to the window, and there he was. His face pressed against the glass. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My body locked in place, trembling with an animal terror I had never known in my life. His hands left smudges against the glass, and his mouth stretched into something meant to be a smile. By the time I scrambled for the phone, he was gone. But I knew then, this wasn't just someone who liked scaring me. This was someone who wasn't going to stop until he owned me or killed me. Finally, Sheriff Miller put more effort into my case after I broke down shaking in his office. Investigations brought a name: Daniel Ross, a drifter with a history of restraining orders filed against him in other states. He had been in town under the radar, doing odd jobs, blending into the quiet corners of Willow Creek life. The sheriff swore they would keep watch, but laws in small towns were slow, and men like Daniel knew how to slip through the cracks. And still, the gifts came. A dead bird on my porch, my mailbox filled with scribbled notes that only read, "I am patient." That summer he escalated. My house was broken into, nothing stolen, nothing touched, except my bed. Sheets pulled back as though someone had lain there waiting. It dawned on me, he wasn't just watching anymore. He was rehearsing, practicing for the moment he chose to finally step fully into my life. I started carrying a firearm Sheriff Miller helped me license. Every shadow looked like him. Every noise was suspect. My world shrank into constant vigilance. But vigilance only works until exhaustion breaks you. It was late August when it happened. I walked home from school only to find my front door slightly ajar. He was inside. I barely had time to react before the floor creaked upstairs. I ran, through the back, across the field, into the dimming forest where willows bent low. My lungs burned as footsteps followed, a steady, unhesitating rhythm. For the first time, I heard his voice clearly behind me. Claire. My own name sharp and echoing against the trees. I fired once blindly into the dark. Silence followed, and then slow laughter. It chased me until I finally reached the sheriff's car, waiting on the gravel road. But Daniel wasn't caught. Not that night. They said he left town. Some claim they saw him hitchhiking along the freeway, disappearing into the horizon. The sheriff reassured me again and again. But sometimes, when the wind bends the willows just so, I swear I see a blue truck parked across the road. Sometimes at night, I wake sure there's someone watching me from the dark corner of the room. And sometimes on my phone, when the line goes quiet, I think I hear it again, breathing. This is the truth of horror. It doesn't need monsters or the supernatural. Sometimes it wears human skin. Sometimes it drives a blue truck. Sometimes it learns your name and decides that you are now its world. Willow Creek gave me peace for a short while,
but it also gave me Daniel Ross, the man who waits somewhere, maybe closer than I ever want to know. Because when someone like him decides to haunt you, the story never truly ends. After that August night, life in Willow Creek tried to resume its gentle rhythm. The blue truck was gone, the packages stopped, and the phone calls faded into silence. But silence is never truly empty once you've known it can be broken. I kept the gun at my bedside. I double-checked every lock. My neighbors began to grow impatient with my paranoia. Even Sheriff Miller urged me to move forward. But sometimes, when life quiets, that is when he listens hardest. School became my only refuge. The laughter of children muffled the echoes of fear. I poured myself into grading, lesson plans, science fairs. Then one afternoon in late September, a note slipped from my desk. A piece of paper I did not put there. Scrawled in crooked handwriting, "You're better when you're scared." I froze. The classroom door had been locked. Students had long gone. That meant someone had been inside while I was teaching, watching, dropping little reminders that I was never beyond his reach. October arrived with the smell of pine smoke and early frosts. On Halloween night, when the town gathered for the parade, I stayed home, every curtain drawn. A knock came at the door around 11 p.m. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The knock came again, and then a voice. "Claire? It's Sheriff Miller. Everything all right?" Relief washed over me as I opened the door, but standing on the porch was not Miller. It was him. His teeth showed in the porch light, his breath forming clouds in the cold. My gun was in the other room, useless through the frozen seconds where my brain tripped between reality and disbelief. "Don't call the cops, Claire," he whispered. "I just wanted to see your face." When I finally slammed the door shut against him, he didn't pound. He didn't shout. He just lingered, scraping something against the wood, as if carving his initials. When silence returned, I found a single word etched into the doorframe. Mine. The sheriff returned with deputies, but it was too late. Daniel had vanished once again, tantalizingly close yet untouchable. Miller rubbed his face wearily. Without catching him in the act, there's only so much the law can do. I wanted to scream, to shake him. The act was coming, wasn't it? Did we have to wait until it happened? But in Willow Creek, shadows moved slower, and men like Daniel thrived on that slowness. Sleep began to unravel. Nights blurred into one another with the weight of every sound amplified. Tree branches scratching, floorboards sighing, water pipes groaning. One night I woke certain someone stood over my bed, but when I turned on the lamp, no one was there. The smell of cigarette smoke lingered. I had never smoked in my life. Some mornings I found objects shifted. My toothbrush in the living room, my clothes folded neatly on the couch. If it wasn't Daniel, then maybe madness itself had set in. Because that's the power of stalking. Even when they're gone, they remain inside you. It was the dead of winter when the silence finally snapped. I woke to the sound of glass shattering, the cold night pouring in. My heart raced as footsteps crunched across the wooden floor. This time there was no waiting, no hovering. He was in my cabin. I grabbed the gun, slipping down the back hall. My breath came in shallow bursts as I tried to steady my hand. A floorboard creaked just feet away. His voice slithered through the dark. "You can't hide, Claire. You've never been able to hide." I pulled the trigger. The blast shook the cabin. Silence followed. then footsteps retreating, running into the night. By the time Miller and his men arrived, they found blood on the floor, but no body. His blood. Daniel was hurt, but he was alive. For weeks after, the snow revealed his movements, footprints leading to the river, cigarette butts buried beneath the ice, scraps of clothing tangled in branches. Search teams combed the woods, but no one found him. Some said he fled the state. Others, hunters mainly, swore they saw someone limping through the trees at dusk, watching, waiting. But deep inside, I knew he wasn't gone. Spring thawed the frost, but not the fear. My friends drifted away, tired of walking me home, tired of my sudden jumps at every shadow. I became the haunted teacher, a woman hollowed out by someone who might not even still be around. Moving away crossed my mind, but fear roots deep. What if he followed me? What if I never shook him? Because people like Daniel don't just give up. They dig in. They wait. And waiting is its own form of violence. On the last day of the school year, I found another envelope in my mailbox. My hands shook before I even opened it. Inside was a photograph. Me, sleeping in bed. The angle was from inside my bedroom doorway, and written on the back were 3 words: "Almost time, Claire." I don't know when he'll strike, or if he already has plans set in motion. Every day feels like a rope stretched tighter. Some nights I imagine killing him myself just to make it stop. Other nights I fear that when the moment comes, I won't even have time to scream. People think horror is about monsters under the bed, but it's not. Horror is a man who learns everything about you, until you don't know where you end and where he. By summer's end, I was exhausted. Living meant waiting for footsteps, waiting for calls, waiting for Daniel Ross to step through the thin barrier between my fragile life and his obsession. I understood finally that I couldn't live in limbo forever. I had 2 choices: leave Willow Creek behind or end it here. But fear had carved me into someone I didn't recognize. I wasn't sure if anywhere else would be safer. What if he followed? What if running was exactly what he wanted? Me out in the open, vulnerable. So I decided to end it here.
I planned carefully. I left signs for him to follow. Curtains open at night, lights left on, the sound of the radio drifting from my porch. Small invitations he couldn't resist. Inside, I cleaned my rifle, kept the handgun on my nightstand, and waited. For days I barely moved, conserving my strength for the night I knew would come. And then it came. Moonlight spread across the cabin floor when I heard the crunch of boots outside. Slow, patient, moving closer. The knob turned. The door pressed open like it had so many times before. He stepped into the cabin, taller and thinner than I remembered, his face pale in the half-light. Bandages wrapped his arm where my last bullet must have torn flesh, but his smile was the same, hungry, certain. "You finally stopped running," he whispered. "I'm not running anymore," I answered, and my voice didn't shake. His eyes gleamed, delighted. "Then you know you're mine.
The gun was steady in my hands. For the first time since Willow Creek, I felt control returning. No, this ends here. He lunged, desperate. The sound of the gunshot tore through the cabin walls, echoing into the trees where willows bent silent witness. Daniel collapsed at my feet, his mouth twisted, not in pain, but in disbelief. He tried to speak, but only blood filled the space where words had lived, the obsessed whisper he had poisoned every inch of my life with. His hand reached toward me, fingers trembling like he still thought he could claim me. But then, finally, his eyes stilled, and Daniel Ross was gone. The sheriff and his deputies came at dawn. They asked questions, took photographs, filled the air with legal words meant to bind chaos into reason. They told me I did what I had to do. They told me I was safe now. Safe. But the word felt strange in my mind, like a foreign language my body no longer believed. Because in the corners of every room, in the rustle of leaves outside my window, I still feel him. The way he lingered, the way he broke me down until even silence feels like his voice. Life in Willow Creek continues. Children laugh at recess, neighbors mow their lawns, the river still runs thick with summer rain. To them, Daniel Ross was a drifter who met his end one night in a quiet cabin. Case closed. But to me, he is a shadow that will not leave, because horror is not only in the moment of violence, it's in the scars it leaves behind. I survived him, but survival is not freedom. Every night, as I lock my door, check my windows, and press the gun back into the drawer, I remind myself he is gone. And yet, the silence always answers back. Are you sure? Do tell me in the comments how you liked this story, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next horror story.